So we have Matt MacInnis here today, who's currently the Chief Operating Officer of Rippling. And my first question to him is going to be about his last startup and what he screwed up there. So before joining Rippling. So Matt, to you, and then I've got obviously much more to ask you and many more things to dive into.
Yeah, well, I mean, man, so I have 25 minutes to talk about 9 years of my life where, things didn't work out as planned. I look back on my time as the CEO of Inkling as, not to be confused with Rippling. All the companies I work for end in ing, L-I-N-G. It has been like one of the most formative, honestly, periods of my entire life, and in part because of the mistakes that we made there. I think, one of the most important ways that I behave differently today versus when I first started that company was that I don't think I realized that it was literally just about the results. Like, you start a company, and I was 29 years old when I started that company, and I did it because I needed to start a company. Yeah, I had an idea, which was digital textbooks. I had an earned secret, which is really important, I think, to a company being successful with respect to the founders, which was that I had insider knowledge of the iPad, having previously worked at Apple. And I was interested in digital textbooks, and I was interested in the iPad, and I was like kind of a good founder to go and do that kind of work. But to be honest, I think I was playing house. Like, I started that company because I needed to start a company, and I needed to start a company because it was something that I had told myself as a teenager that I needed to do. And I got to the age of 29 and I kind of panicked that I hadn't fulfilled the scripture, that I had written for myself as a teenager. And so I played house. I did the things, I behaved in the ways that I thought a successful founder or a successful CEO should behave, instead of just being myself, like being an unadulterated version of myself and accepting the consequences of being myself. Because, you're only successful when when you're authentic. If you're inauthentic, you're some lesser version of what you have the potential to be. And it just took me way too long, honestly, to learn that. And what that translated into for me was like a focus on things other than output, like a focus on things other than results, which is where I get the term playing house. Like, I wish that I had then what I have now, which is a much more disciplined focus on driving output, getting to the result that the business needs without any regard for how anybody else is going to see it, which frankly took a little bit of self-confidence now that I didn't have when I was 29 and I started that company. So I don't know, it's a bit of a rambly answer, but I feel like, it was as much a struggle with my own ego as anything to get to what actually drives success, which is a focus on results. And now I know the difference.
Yeah, as a startup founder myself that has built quite a few companies over the last 18 years, I can completely resonate with exactly what you mean by that. At this point, I'm a very unadulterated version of myself.
Right.
As long as I have that authority in terms of going after the common goal and the output and the outcome, it doesn't matter how we do it, as long as I'm being real and genuine to myself first and foremost, and then to everyone else. So I couldn't expect a better answer from someone who's been there, done it, and had to deal with their own startup and mistakes and failures and successes for over 9 years.
The most beautiful people in the world are the ones who went through the honing of waking up every morning and battling their demons. But I guess you know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible. I just love your answer. I can't express how accurate it is in my own experience, even with other founders and folks who are in operating roles. So one thing that I think as a chief operating officer, now that you're that, which is in some ways not different than the CEO, and in other ways very different, of course.
It's a huge downgrade. Yeah,
I'm sure you have less pressure and more pressure,
yeah, right.
From your last role now in different ways. One of the biggest things that comes up has to do with people, of course. You're responsible for a lot of things and people at the company. So I'm wondering how you actually think about people and their performance, and I'm sure you're going to have a secret in here, actually, but the real question is, how do you assess someone's ability to drive results as early as possible. So I know that's loaded, but it's just a question about people and performance and achievements and how you can assess them early. Well, early is kind of, I think, a really important thing and often not talked about.
Yeah, I have so many ingredients to somebody performing. Like, what does it mean to perform? It's like, it's two things. It's what you achieve and how you achieve it. And the what you achieve part, the task part of it, is pretty easy to spot, right? Somebody who delivers results consistently, who hits the number they've got to hit, who gets the deal done they've got to get done, who ships the product they've got to get shipped. I mean, it's just like you look at a spectrum of performance from, modestly okay up through amazing, and you see amazing right away. It's so easy to spot. The challenge is when, what they achieve is great, but how they achieved it is not. Either because they stepped on other people's toes in an unproductive way, they put themselves before the team, or they put their team before the company, or they put their company before society. There's a lot of ways that you can really fuck this up. And I find that the people who are going to be star performers in their careers, and this is not just like, hey, who's gonna deliver a result this month or this quarter, but it's like, who's gonna be the next senior vice president of this function, who's gonna go off and be a CEO themselves in a really successful way, is something you can identify like super early in their career, because they have an innate bias for action. They have this this knack for delivering on the output from the earliest moments in their career. So like I really enjoy, we have a biz ops team here, and the biz ops team is, folks who have come out of McKinsey or folks who have come out of, other entrepreneurship roles, and just have a really high caliber of abstract thought. They're like systems thinkers. They're able to reason with kind of any input you give them. And I really enjoy working with those people because they tend to have this built-in ability to kind of go get shit done with a very small amount of input. And what I find is kind of most predictive of success among people at that stage in their career is this lack of focus on themselves. Like, they immediately have a team attitude. They immediately want the result for the team more than they want it for themselves, and are willing to sacrifice their own perceived interests in order to get there for the team. And, again, it is coachable. And I don't know that I was that person necessarily when I was younger. I think you can grow into it. But I can say that, like, when you're 25 or you're 30 or earlier in your career, you can be confused by the politics around you in a company into thinking that somebody's going to get ahead of me, that if I don't advocate for myself, my interests are not going to be met. And the thing that I can say now unequivocally, at least in a good culture and in a good company, is that if you just put your head down and you actually work to deliver results, it is unequivocal that you'll be recognized and lifted up and reap the rewards for it. It comes back to like playing house. The more time that someone invests trying to look successful, the less time they're spending being successful. The more time they try managing up, the less time they're spending managing down. And like managing down is what actually drives results. So it's crazy, right? Like, the more concerned you are with being successful, the less successful you are. It's a crazy paradox that is just lightning clear when you talk to somebody at any stage of their career, but I find it particularly pernicious for 20-somethings who are still trying to find their place in the workplace. Like, just go fucking get it done, and over time you can be guaranteed that people are going to see that. And some people have that built in, and you can just spot it early, and you know they're going to be kick-ass employees, teammates, and leaders.
That's so inspiring, to be frank, because if I were listening and I was in that age group, I'd be like, oh, so I just have to go get stuff done, huh? That's it?
It's a pretty simple recipe.
That's it.
It's one other layer on top of this too, by the way, is like, it's really hard to know what you're good at in certain respects, but it's actually really easy in others. And knowing what you're good at is what leads to success, because you can focus on doing the things you're good at. And the key simple thing that I've said to people many times, and they're sort of surprised by its simplicity, is like, if you want to know what you're good at, look at what you enjoy doing. Like, if you spend time at work in a spreadsheet, manipulating data, and that's the easy thing, then that's what you're good at. If you spend time at work building relationships, knocking down barriers, coaching people, and you enjoy it, then that's what you're good at. And if everybody would just go and do what they're good at, not what they want to be good at, not what they think they're supposed to be good at, not what their mother wants them to be good at, not what their 18-year-old self told them they're supposed to be good at, pointing at myself here. Like, just go be good at what you're actually fucking naturally good at. If everyone just went and did that, the world would be more relaxed, the world would be more self-actualized. And you know what? If your journey is not to go and be the CEO, if your journey is not to be a billionaire, if your journey is not to save the world or solve, climate change, your journey is something else. The sooner you figure out what that is, the natural, authentic path for you, where you just love doing what you're doing all day, the sooner you find happiness. And, that's to me, like, again, talking about early career people, the minute you figure out what you really enjoy spending your time on, just go spend as much time on that as you possibly can at work every day. And that simple recipe will translate to performance, happiness, growth, self-actualization, and impact. It's really simple.
See, you are sharing secrets, and I was right. They just sound so simple. That's actually the beauty in what you're saying is like it's just truth and it's pure and it's all simple. People should focus on and nothing else. On that note, what I'm curious about is how this extends to teams. So obviously you're responsible for, I'm assuming, many different teams at the company, and you've had a lot of experience running a company, so you're responsible for the whole thing. How do you extend this to teams in terms of performance, what to do when they're not performing, how to assess them? I know we don't have a whole day to talk about this because it's probably at least a day-long topic, but whatever nuggets you can share would be great to hear. I'm curious too how you think about that.
Yeah, again, it's simple, like everything, sort of simple principles that are super hard to enact. And by the way, I sit here, spouting this stuff at you, and think about, one half of my brain is saying to you what I think, and the other half of my brain is actually criticizing the areas in, my own business today where I'm failing to even,
I know the feeling.
Adhere to my own advice, right? So advice is so easy to give and so hard to implement. And these concepts are so simple in theory and so tricky in practice. But, with respect to teams, I always come back around whenever I think about, what works and what doesn't. I have to think about specific examples. And, I literally just rolled out of a meeting before this interview where I was sitting with my current VP of Biz Ops. And like 2 or 3 days ago, I said to him, hey, we just onboarded our new CTO. And he's trying to figure out his organization. He's trying to figure out who reports to whom, span of control, what does the org look like, where are we hiring, what's the pace of hiring, like how are we building this R&D engine for the company. And I said, hey, you should just put a package together for him. Work with our HR team, our finance team, like get him a snapshot of what his organization looks like. And this guy, VP Sunil, said, yep, I'll go do it. And like 48 hours later, he comes back to me and it's just like spot on, bang. He's got like the org charts, span of control, the data, it's all there, it's all organized, some holes here and there, but like, hey, he's like, what do you think? I'm like, this is better than I would have done myself in twice the time, And I was like, shit, okay, I got a leader here who just kind of knows how to go and get something done. And, I've got multiple leaders like that in my business who I can give them a rough hewn concept of something that needs to get done, and they can just go and execute on it independently and better than I ever would have. And when you have a leader like that over a function who is capable of marshaling the resources, driving the 2 key ingredients to organizational success, which are clarity and alignment, both at the same time, clarity and alignment, then you get a really high functioning group. And anything short of that with respect to the leader of that team is inadequate. All the nice high performers, people with potential under that person are not going to perform at the level the business needs them to. And I know it's like an adage, like not particularly insightful to say that like the managers in the business are the ones who really determine how the company's going to go. We almost think of like middle management as a dirty term, and I think of middle management as like the make or break character of a company. Smart executives, crappy middle managers, bad outcome, crappy executives, awesome middle managers, I'd kind of take that over the former. And so for me, like team performance, really the highest order bit comes down to the quality of the leader of that team, their ability to take rough-hewn concepts and turn them into execution with a minimum of input from above. To me, like when you think about the team writ large, i.e. a company, and you think about the next layer down, which is, let's say, a whole function, and you think of the next layer down, which is like a sub-function, the best thing that can possibly happen at every layer in the hierarchy is that each manager pushes up on the person above them. Each employee pushes up on their manager, takes things proactively off their plate, says, boss, I'm going to do this for you, and then independently executes, which frees their boss up to take on stuff from their boss. And you play that out all the way to the top, and now you've got a super high-powered CEO because everyone under that CEO is pushing up on him or her, and it cascades down. It's really, really powerful concept. So for me, like high-performing teams, number one, really awesome managers. Number two, really capable individuals who push up on the managers above them at every layer in the hierarchy. And then, of course, for you as the person responsible for the team, this is the hard part, is like the discipline to know when you have a suboptimal performer and what to do about it, which is, the hard part. But you kind of can't settle for less, and it's just crazy to think. You can sort of tolerate a suboptimal performer in an individual contributor role for some period of time, give them a chance, help them, find their way, if for no other reason than to be compassionate and have a good culture. But the higher up the hierarchy you go in terms of the manager of the business, of a function or a team, the more ruthless you have to be, because it's just such a high order bit in the performance of a team. So I don't know, I'm riffing here, but those are some of my thoughts on team performance.
It's great. That's very clear. One thing I like to say, and just need to say more in the world and with our own team, is leadership is clarity. And I use the word alignment quite a bit internally. So you're preaching to the choir. I hope everyone can internalize what you said about clarity and alignment, and those two things being the most important things. I couldn't agree more. So on that note, you mentioned something in passing in a couple answers ago in our discussion earlier, and it was about managing up and managing down.
Yeah. And
I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of that whole, I'm going to call it situation, because it is a situation of in every organization where people are trying to manage up, manage down. And how do you think about that? How do you either balance it? Is there one you go after versus another? What do you recommend to folks that are out there in terms of managing up and managing down?
Yeah, I mean, the concept, right, of managing up is to do what? To set expectations appropriately with your boss, to shape your boss's thinking, to defend your team from criticism. Managing up, sometimes we say, sort of as a criticism of a leader, that he doesn't know how to manage up or she doesn't know how to manage up. I don't know, man. What I believe is that if you're really good at managing down, you don't need to manage up. And this is something, actually, for the record, I learned from Parker, our CEO here at Rippling. Yeah, one of the things I love most about working with Parker is like, he doesn't care about the trappings of CEO-ship. He doesn't care about the trappings of entrepreneurship. He doesn't, he's got a fun phrase, which is the mahogany paneling. He doesn't want the mahogany paneling. He doesn't want a corner office. He doesn't he's not interested in any of that. And he doesn't have an assistant, although I'm going to get him on that one at some point. And why do I bring all of this up? When he talks about managing up and managing down, no executive likes to be managed. And I think this is something that many earlier career people don't understand. Is like, if you think you're being clever managing your manager, shaping their thinking on something, if they're not calling your bullshit on it, they're literally just deciding to not put the energy into calling your bullshit, but they're definitely aware of what you're doing. So what's your alternative to managing up? Like, if you're not going to be able to convince your boss that things are better than they are, try to walk them through a deck, by the way. Let's just talk about walking people through a deck. Your boss hates being walked through a deck. The reason they don't want to be walked through something is because they know what's happening. The information is being structured in a way as to try to get them to reach the same conclusion that you did. The problem is it would be so much more useful for the business if they reached a different conclusion. So why don't you maximize the likelihood that they're going to reach a different conclusion from you and just give them the raw data instead of walking them through them and, out of fear that they're going to, come to the wrong conclusion, something other than what you came to. All of this is in the bucket of managing up. The alternative to managing up is to manage down. The alternative is to be the manager who simply focuses on what his or her team is doing to deliver a result, to deliver a really good result. It's way harder. It's way more vulnerable. It's way riskier to be focused on just getting the result and not worry about how it's going to be interpreted above you, because all of your energy has gone into getting the right answer and to getting the right result. And so around here, people don't do a whole lot of managing up, because I think from Parker's perspective, it's something that he's kind of kept out of the business as an attitude or an approach. And it leaves people sort of naked in a really powerful way, that the manager understands that what I've got to do is go and work with my team to get to the result, because there's not going to be any tolerance or patience in the business for me shaping the story above me. At least I like to think that we've gotten to a place in the company where it's that way. And it's the only way that high-performing teams work. So that, you asked about manage up, manage down, what does it mean? That's how I think about it and how we approach it here.
Awesome, thank you. I resonate with Parker on that one, because I do not have an assistant or admin, and I manage my own calendar. And I've been doing that forever, and I don't plan on changing. So
crazy.
Yeah, I think you've got a mountain to climb if you're going to try to get him to do that. But good luck, because I have the same exact mindset. I haven't met many other folks like that, so that's reinforcing my own BS. If that makes sense.
Parker and I have known each other since we were teenagers, and if there's one thing I can say that in terms of mountains to climb with kind of get Parker to do things differently, I think the assistant one is it's going to be a softball.
I love it. I have one last question for you, and it's a little bit selfish considering everything else you said. What keeps you up at night, Matt?
I'm going to assume that question is scoped around work.
Yeah, sure. You can scope it around whatever you'd like. But it's what I am eternally curious about at this moment.
Yeah, honestly, what keeps me up at night is we have a lot that happens at this company at the same time. As anybody who's kind of paid even distant attention to Rippling as a company and why we're successful so far, it's around the ambition of the business and how many different components we think we can tie together into a coherent environment for people to run their companies. And the side effect of that is that we do a lot at once and we move really quickly. And we're really good at moving quickly. We're really good at it. But every strength becomes a weakness when taken to an extreme. It's just a reality, and it's true of individuals, and it's true of teams. And it's entirely forgivable, but for our company, Parker is my CEO, and he is the guy who thinks about what it is we've got to get done in order to win. As the chief operating officer, I think my job is to figure out how. And I worry, what keeps me up at night is that we are, I think we move really quickly, really aggressively. We build great software and we support our customers. I think we have a strong culture internally of accountability, directness, productive conflict, team building. However, I worry sometimes that we don't take a beat once in a while to make sure that the pistol is aimed in exactly the right direction, but not exactly the right direction, but at least we're reasonably confident the pistol is aimed in the right direction before we pull the trigger. And I challenge my colleagues on that kind of thing a lot. And I think what I worry about is not the outcome of the company or whether we are good with our customers. I think we do great there. I think I worry that I'm maybe the nag, that I'm the counterculture actor in the business, that that if I overstep it a little too much, maybe I'm the persona non grata. And I practically speaking, intellectually, whatever. That's just not actually a risk. I think I'm paid to be here to provide my opinion, perhaps sometimes to be the countervailing force. But I gotta say, in my heart, in my gut, the thing that I worry about is I'm the brakes a little bit, and I don't want to be the brakes, but I feel like it's the right thing to do. And so it's this conflict of knowing the right thing and then actually doing the right thing and maybe suffering the consequences. That creates anxiety inside me. But it's my job at the company, and so what keeps me awake at night is my job.
I love that. That's pretty deep and very personal, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm sure a lot of folks in your position feel very similarly. I know my co-founder, she's our COO. We're much smaller than Rippling right now. Probably has very similar sentiments to you, because I'm always pushing to go faster and get things done, and she's always, not always, but she's the one that hits the brakes, not me.
Can I?
So,
I'll give you.
Totally get it.
I'll give you one unsolicited piece of advice on behalf of your COO, which is
please.
And Parker does this for me too, and I really appreciate what he does. Look, just say to her, hey, I pay you for your opinion. It's even if you catch me in a bad mood and I don't feel like I want to hear what you have to say, I actually always need to hear what you have to say. And I think for every great manager to say that to their deputy, for every leader to say it to somebody who's got an inconvenient truth to share with them, you got to invite the criticism, you've got to invite the uncomfortable conversations, and that's what builds good teams and good relationships.
I really love that. Yeah, really resonates with me. I definitely do that as much as I can, but that's another double clicking on that. Looks like I'm going to have a conversation with her after this and get aligned on some of these things. I really love that. Thank you so much for your time today and all these insights. They're more than I could have hoped for. Really appreciate it, Matt.
No problem, and thanks for being a Rippling customer.
Yeah, have a good one.